Welcome back to the Profit School by MeasureU podcast. This is the Business Unfiltered edition, a conversation between myself, Jeff Sauer, and my business partner, Mercer. And today we're going to be talking about using AI agents as your partner. And we'll talk about what we mean by partner in a little bit here, but this is a follow-up to our last episode where we were talking about how we're using AI to store some of our intelligence. And we wanted to do a dedicated episode to unpack that. And so here we are today. And so Mercer, and I hand it over to you to just sort of say, where do you think we left off, and where do you see this one going as far as this idea of having agents as your partner in crime?
Yeah, I think just kind of like with the tradition of what this podcast has been, it's defining all this stuff first, right? Like, so what do we mean about AI agents, and how do we mean this idea of partnership, and the idea behind it, kind of what we're thinking about. For me, the AI agent thing is rapidly evolving as a definition, right? So it's like it I think originally was like each individual little bot things you would buy that can do a specific thing. And that's what everybody called them, AI agents. And I think that is still true. But I also think there's that AI agent-like behavior that you can build on your own with things like, Gemini Gems or the ChatGPT assistants and that sort of stuff. And then there's just the idea of using AI to kind of create this partnership, which is kind of where that partner idea comes from. So that instead of using AI kind of like as just like a separate tool outside of you, that's just like a hammer, right? And everything's a nail now. You're using it more like a conversational partner, brainstorming, working, you both are helping each other to get better, is kind of how I look at it. So for me, the AI agent part of this is building something that does a kind of like a brick, like a Lego brick. You build this thing that does this thing really, really well. Whether you build it or whether you buy it, it does this thing really, really well. And it uses AI to do it. That's the AI agent part. In terms of the partnership, it's using it in a partnership way to help grow our companies. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Do I get it close? Kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think in a very similar way. You're right with the agent piece. I've heard it called a few different names. Like every AI tool has their own way of talking about this, but the idea is that instead of talking to general large language model about everything, you're talking to the persona of a copywriter, or you're talking to the YouTube script writer, or you're talking to the analyst, or you're talking to the business consultant. So I think that's roughly we're lumping that all into the word agent. And so it can be any part of your business or anything, right? That you're talking to somebody who has specialized knowledge, and the way that each platform does it is a little bit different. And, it's funny. I even like about a month ago or maybe 2 months ago, I was talking to a friend, Malcolm, and I was like, hey, I don't think that AI agents are that big of a deal. And he's like, and I was like, everybody talks about this, but shouldn't these models get good enough that they can just do that for you? Like, shouldn't they just know like what a copywriter is? Like once they get better and there's more computational power. And he had a good point. And he's like, that's not what they're trained to do. They need to have all the knowledge for everybody. It's like the general installation. Like we install Google Analytics all the time. It's like Google Analytics is the same Google Analytics when you get installed from like 10 visitor cat blog all the way to the biggest e-commerce store in the world. They have the same thing. It's what you do to customize it to make it work that really makes the difference. And that's the same with like a large language model. They get better at things. They can have these things preloaded, but if you can preload the specialized knowledge of somebody like a copywriter, you probably will get better results. And so he quickly was like, you know what? I think that this will always be needed. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And I was like, but what happens when all that knowledge is just undercut, instead of having the copywriter, I keep on using that example, instead of having a copywriter's intellectual capital, the system can do something like deep research. It can like the AI can do these things and have that loaded. Wouldn't they just have it built into the model? Would you need a separate thing? Because I was a little bit worried about having these agents having to create something proprietary when it could go out of date right away. Like I see that as like building an app on top of an ecosystem where that ecosystem is eventually going to undercut you. And that's been happening a lot. I've seen that happening so much in AI, and even we've been in the software industry forever. It's like, yeah, here's a feature that was lacking in Google Analytics again, and then Google adds it to the product. And it's like, okay, well, I guess that tool's out of business. So I looked at agents as like a temporary thing, that we would use. And then eventually the AI would just have that knowledge and we wouldn't need to have a specialized agent. But the thing is a timeline. Like, what is the timeline of that? Is that something where I could have agents for 2 years and have a competitive advantage and then go to it and then it's into the model? Okay, well, that's a good 2 years. What else? I would rather have a competitive advantage for 2 years than worry about going away the third year. So that's sort of like, agents, basically, it's this idea of having a co-pilot or a partner in crime, a business partner, a virtual a copy of you, so you can talk to yourself and see your own blind spots in one place. But the question is, how long do we need them, and do we need them, right? So so I might be rambling a little bit, but the agents thing, I've been on both sides of it. Right now I'm definitely pro agent because I've been using some agents and they've been working really well. But let's go into strategies. Like, okay, so say that you want to have this partner in crime, Mercer. What would you do? Like, how would you go about that? Would you take something off the shelf? Would you develop yourself? I know you've been doing a lot of this in your own personal research. So how do you get that partner on your side? What's a method or what's a way that you would go about that? Would you build your own? Would you use something off the shelf? Would you hire from a guru? How would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like yes to all, it's going to be the consultant answer if it depends, I think, for everybody. But for my perspective, AI is not a thing, right?
Yep.
Just like, it's like saying, oh, I know the internet. It's like the internet's not a thing. The internet's just what we call a billion different things, right? AI is also like that. And I think that's kind of what that conversation was with whoever you're talking to before about AI agents. It's kind of what they're saying is like, you can't just have a thing, know all things all the time. It's because we just don't have the computational power for that yet. That absolutely is going to happen. That's just time, right? And then we will be able to do that. Very similar to those, back when we grew up with computers where it was like, remember when RAM was the limiting factor and you had to get like 128 kilobytes of RAM and eventually it was 256 kilobytes and now they're terabytes of memory. Like, the computational power is going to change. Same thing's going to happen with AI. Right now, though, the stage that we are currently in, everybody has to be very efficient with their resources. And that's where this whole agentic thing is coming from. So what's happening is you say, okay, I'm going to take this AI thing. And this is kind of what we do. We're going to take this AI. We're going to work with the AI to craft these specific things that it's very good at, but that is a repeatable process, a repeatable system. So we're using AI to create a thing that AI does over and over again, but it always does it in the same way, right? Or in the same method or in the same pattern. We're using the same system. We're using the same rules. That's what we mean by just kind of that agentic behavior. It's going in a circle over and over again. So as an example to that, it would be, we created a customer avatar, right? We've got customer personas, and these customer personas, we've activated them by not just saying, okay, yeah, now we know our customer persona and that's great. And, everybody can talk about it like every other corporation has done for, the last 40 years, just sort of talking about that, but not really activating them. Activating them with AI is this next level where you can say, okay, go to the avatar and say, what do you think the sales page should say? What do you wish the headline was? What products do you wish we had? What products do you think you're going to need in 6 months? Now that you've taken our initial product or services. You can do a lot of different things like that. So I'm using it for that versus what I think more other agentic behavior things can be. And nothing wrong with them, I'm not using them, but it's things like, go build this web page. And then the agent go and builds the web page or develops an app, makes a copy of Reddit. Like I've seen all of that different stuff and that's fine. I just don't have a need to do any of that yet. For me, it's the what to put on the page is the most important part, not how to get it on the page yet. But I think eventually that stuff will start happening too, and then that'll just be, you talk to AI and then all of a sudden you've got a web page. If you even have a web page. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about just over the years, how this is going to interact, and AI is probably just going to be the interface that everyone has. And I mean, web pages are not a thing because why would you need them? The AI is just doing everything for you, so there's a lot that'll come down. That's a whole other podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's scary, man. That would be like a full circle on my career because I have a career because of web pages, and so
we'll still have the internet. That'll be the thing, right? It'll just be a different interface. But I think that's where I think like eventually this all does get wrapped up, and Google will have all the billions of agents out there that they've developed to do all these things. And what'll happen is you'll just be talking to, Gemini or whatever. And then Gemini in the background will be doing that, turning them on and off for whatever it needs. And you would never know it happens. Yeah. I can very quickly see that to be a thing. And that's what makes it hard because there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to keep up with what is cutting edge on AI. But that edge is just so freakishly fast on how fast the edge evolves, that there's a lot of people who are just sitting back going, well, I could learn how to build an agent, or I could just wait maybe, 3 weeks. And then there's AI that builds its own agents. And
Yeah.
then, 3 weeks after that, it's never mind. You don't have to build your own agents anymore. And then in 3 weeks after that, it's like, never mind. Google bought that company. Now it's integrated into, or whatever, or ChatGPT did or whatever. So, but that's, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the point of the AI agent for me is the proper way to think about AI is building things that you can use AI to do. It's like AI is clay and I can make a ton of pots with it. That's what makes clay useful. Clay by itself is not going to be useful unless you make it into something. And that's kind of what that AI sort of agentic behavior is, if that helps.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So I wrote down that AI, like an agent is like intellectual capital in a container backed by a cyborg brain.
Yeah. Because it is kind of the instructions, right, are that intellectual capital that you're downloading from your head into this thing.
Yep.
That's now powered by. That's a really good way to think about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Notebook LM was, right? Notebook LM is an agent of Jeff. That's why I got so excited about it. And I'm so excited about it. Right. But, what I found is that sometimes the brain on top of it isn't always there because it can't necessarily access the internet like Gemini can. So it's like, so when you start using Gemini gems for that, or we start using specialty tools. But the cool thing is I actually thought of another analogy that I think could be really helpful for people, especially those with kids, is that look at AI, like we always worry like that you're going to be wrong with AI, but I think that's the wrong way to look at it. You are absolutely going to be wrong, and you're going to look back at it and be like, wow, it was so cute back then, right? Just like a kid. So like, when your first year of having a kid, like you're throwing away their clothes or donating them every 3 months. It's like every 3 months, it's like a new thing. And you're like, hey, okay, this is going to go to somebody else. Another family can use that thing, but like you have hand-me-downs. And if you had everything new, then you'd be like, why am I buying these new baby Air Jordan size 2 when he goes to size 3 like the next day, right? Like overnight, they're literally growing. So it's like, why are you putting too much effort into that? And that's why baby clothes are usually cheaper. And that's why baby clothes are something that they're meant to be expendable because they get dirty, they get stained and everything like that. Then as the kid gets older, it's like, okay, now it's like one set of clothes for the year, right? They have a whole year worth of clothes and sometimes, and then they grow out of it. But that's okay. So you be using an agent for a year and it might be good, but that's okay. Cause like, you're prepared for it. You might spend a little bit more on that because it's going to last for a year versus for 3 months, but you're prepared to throw it all out or to donate it to the next person. And that's sort of how we've been in Mercer. Like we've been donating our knowledge to the next group of people in our workshops, in our training. We're doing our AI first challenge. Like that is basically donating everything we've been doing for the last month or 2 months, right away. And it's like some of the stuff is going to work for 3 months. Some of the stuff might not, but it will probably work. It'll probably serve you well to get to this level. So we're actually leveling you up to where we were yesterday, today, or where we are right now. Then if we do it a month later or a quarter later, we're donating the next version of it. We're going to go back to town, go back and research that stuff. And that's sort of what AI is right now. And so a leader is not somebody who's, maybe not somebody with teenagers, because people with teenagers do not remember what it's like to have newborn kids anymore, like to not sleep through the night, to all these different things. Like that's just what it is, right? So ultimately, like, right now you have I talk about the early adopter curve in almost every episode, but like you have the innovators, then you have the early majority, or it's innovators. Wait,
this is only because you jinxed yourself because she's like, I talk about it all the time, and then you're like, I talk about it too much.
yeah. So the early adopters, and then so it's innovators, early adopters, early majority. So innovators are the ones that are creating the agents. Early adopters are the ones that are using it. Early majority is going to be using that for a while. But then if you don't get the innovators are creating the next thing 3 months later. So it's like, okay, it's going to cycle through what we're using, but it's still valuable. Like the idea, going back to saying, if you could have all the intellectual capital for somebody who's maybe smarter than you, probably smarter than you, backed by a cyborg brain, would you take the latest version of that? And then would you be mad if the next version of it was better? Yeah. No, we shouldn't be. And you shouldn't be worried about that. Like that's not the point of this thing, is that yes, it will always be better, but what's going to get you to where you are right now? And that's what I think these agents can do. The idea of an agent, it's a container with this capital. Okay.
Yeah. And I think when you said like idea of an agent, that for me is like, that's exactly it. It's mindset. It's the mindset that your job is to use it like by creating these agents, right?
Yep.
The way you interact with it, thinking about it like that. I need to do this exact thing. I need to do this exact thing really well. I'm going to work with it to figure out how to use it to do this exact thing really well. And then once you figure that out, like you said, you can put it out there, talk about it. Other people can see it. Half the battle with AI is just asking the right question. Like that's really it. And then, unfortunately, there's lots of ways you can just ask AI what the right question is to ask, and it'll help you with that. So it's a little pro tip for anybody getting stuck. But it's always the most current truth, like to your point, on what AI is capable of and what the things are. And the sooner that you interact with it, and this is kind of the main point of Profit School, helping everybody kind of get this AI first business, is getting work done through AI first, where at least you think first, how do I get this done with AI? As my kind of partnership tool now.
Yeah.
And that mindset shift is super important. And I get it, because I did this for a long time when, right when in that November of 2022, right, when ChatGPT came out with OpenAI's ChatGPT, when they first announced it, it was like, all right, let's just see where this kind of goes. And I'm going to sit back and wait. And then as soon as I would start to get in the water, it would be like, wait, no, the water just got deeper. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to wait a little bit, because it's like, it's still evolving and I can't get started on anything. And now it's cool enough, like things aren't changing as fast, at least on that chat side of things, where, you have a reason to just wait. Everybody should be playing with this at this point, at least getting kind of used to it, at least getting that truth, that sort of most current truth to it. But if you've just been interacting with it as a chat interface, or just talking things through and brainstorming stuff, and you haven't taken the time, and this is what I think that you're kind of saying here, if you haven't taken the time to sort of level up your interactions with AI. So instead of just, we're just talking about chats back and forth, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to create this specific thing that I'm going to use over and over and over again, so I don't have to do this process over and over and over again. Now I've got a thing that's trained on how to help me like, for example, I did this. I created a thing to help me brainstorm how to be more intrinsically motivated by just interacting with the conversation. I would naturally get motivated, so I didn't have to feel effort anymore. And that's such a weird esoteric thing to ask, but I was like, why not? It's AI. It knows all things. Let's figure out if it can help me with that. So I did. I created a little gem. Now the gem does that. It's my little personal training coach, right? And like you said, Notebook LM, same concept. You can use Notebook LM and do that. Just, bring in whatever the book is you're trying to learn, load it with Notebook LM. That, in a way, is an agent. It's user interface that's interacting with that LLM, the AI, but it's for a specific purpose, so that it'll create little podcasts. So it'll then automatically tell you everything about the book that you need to know, specifically to your company if you wanted it to, so they can do some pretty cool stuff. But it's like you said, the trick is getting started with it, as soon as possible. Well,
let's get into some tactics, because I think that's the Pete, like, how do we activate this? I think we're in a stage where everything starts as a feature. Like, that's how software always starts as a feature. Like, Twitter was a messaging platform. They were actually a podcasting platform that had direct messages built into it. And then that became, they pivoted and got rid of the podcasting thing and turned it into Twitter. That's how Slack was. Slack was a game, like the way that you chat in between games. And suddenly they're like, oh, this is actually better than the games that we created. Let's create Slack. Like, a lot of things start out as a feature and then they spin it off. And that's what an agent is right now. That's what a lot of things are. And so you see, like, there's, the technology is LLMs, or let's just call it OpenAI or ChatGPT is there's three of them. There's Anthropic, there's ChatGPT, and there's Gemini, right? Those are the three main ones. There's Llama, there's Grok, like there's a lot of them, but those things are the internet, or those are the operating system. That's Windows, that's Mac, that's Linux, right? That's those are. Then we need apps, right? Some of these apps are created by Microsoft. They have their whole Office suite. Some of the,
they have Copilot.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Microsoft
they have these
created
different
Copilot for theirs to interact.
Yeah, they have their own apps, right? And then, but then there's the specialty AI is basically creating the apps that you'd put on the App Store for iOS, or the programs you used to download for Windows or the Mac, right? Like the CD-ROMs you would get. That's the what we call agents. That's what we call specialty layers that go on top of it. Those they do special things,
like the ChatGPT assistants in their case, or the Gemini gems is what you would think.
Exactly.
Yep. World. Okay.
Or Manus, or I'm looking at one called Marblism. It says AI agents that your team of AI employees, and it's basically like, hey, here's a marketing analyst, and they basically are selling agents as a service. Yeah. Right. So it's like, I need those things. Or Fathom Note Taker is one of them, or any other note taker that you use, right? Like, there's so many. Read.ai. There's a million things, and they're almost all apps that go on top of one of the three major operating systems.
Yeah, exactly.
That are out there. Like, that's the world that we live in. So it's like, okay, well, an agent is just, think of it like a program right now. The programs aren't nearly as buttoned up as like a CD-ROM where you have to press it, but that's great because that thing's not change. You don't have to like go get a new CD every time that it changes or they update it. You can just get it off the internet. It's pushed to you live. It's more like the Apple App Store, if anything, right? And it doesn't even have that much. Like the App Store, you have to actually get a version approved and do things. This is just happening no matter what. You're getting whatever version that you want and they roll it out to you. So that's awesome. So tactically we basically have all these different apps we can use for different things. Think of it that way. It's like, okay, well, I should be using agents as much as possible because some apps, I download and I don't use them ever. Some of them I use every single day. And you don't really know which one it's going to be because it has to be that combination of inspiring you, design, all these different things. But that is something where you find the right one and you will use it every single day. So Mercer talked about we use gems almost every single day. I'm using Notebook LM every day. I'm using something from copycoders.ai every day for a copywriting coach. Where I'm looking into this. Some of these things about like AI agents that replace team members. That's not really what we're looking for. But if it's a role that if we're coming down between, should I hire this role? Or should I use AI for it? I'm probably going to use AI for it, right? So if it's like customer service agent, if we needed to hire somebody, wouldn't we look to AI first? So tactically is like, how do I make AI the first choice and then say, okay, well, no, AI can't do this thing still, or I don't have that time or the intellectual capital to do this thing. Let's hire somebody to do that. And I think that's a good way to look at it, right? Is like, okay, is there an AI solution? Chances are there is. Chances are it's in its infancy. It's probably going to crash a few times. It might give you some results you don't look for or that you don't want, but it's still probably more efficient than having to train somebody, do daily onboarding calls with them, work with all the different things, get them paid and everything like that. Definitely a good alternative to doing that. You look at it that way too? Is that something that you're like, are you, I know we're AI first. So like from a tactical perspective, how do AI agents make you AI first?
This is where I think that mindset shift has to happen, right? That AI first mindset shift, which is where you initially go, okay, I need to get my work done. And the first thing you think about is how do I get it done with AI? Always. Like, I just like when was working, this is probably like about a month and a half ago now, something like that. I was working on having the avatars, which we talked about, right? So we created the avatars, and that in and of itself was something else we created that created avatars, right? So we created this thing that was really good at creating avatars using deep research and having it research how to do that in our company, and then combined all that to say, okay, now you can just create avatars. And then we create the avatars. Now we've got the avatars as their own little agents, right? So we've got an agent that creates avatars. We've got the actual avatars that become agents, or these customer personas that we can activate and interact with. And what I did is I would do things like, initially it was like, okay, what should here's our sales page, please analyze the copy, blah, 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 and tell us what to do. And there's some usefulness to that. We got improvement from that. We've had conversion rate improvements that came from that. Substantial. Then there's this sort of other things you can do with it. And this is what I like about AI, because you can do things like, well, let's have the avatars. Let me just explain what the offer is as I would talk about it without trying to sell it to anybody. I'm just trying to explain what it is, give it to the avatar and say, hey, now you sell it to me however you think you should, right? Because now the customer avatar, right, that persona is going to explain it back to another potential person that it believes should buy this program. So it's going to do it in the way that it feels is necessary. It feels is the priority of features and benefits and everything else. And I don't know that we maybe have had that right. So there was another way we can get this completely different perspective shift from AI. That's the whole point of this, is to have you look at your company in a slightly different way and go, oh, there's the move to make. Now I see it because AI helped me see it. Right. So I guess that's how I'm currently, focused on the agents. I personally don't use a lot. I know you do, which is awesome. I don't do a lot of the third party, agent stuff. I try to figure out, because my thing is, and I love that you do, because I think especially for us as with ProfitSchool, MeasureU, and Measure Summit, it's like we have the benefit, we get the best of both worlds doing it this way, right? So you can go out there and learn these different agent and tools. I am of the opinion they won't be around in a year, and you probably know that too. I mean, it makes sense. It's like they're not going to be around because they're going to get absorbed into one of the motherships probably, or other people are just going to create better agents, and then we'll flip to those, right? So that edge where you're doing all these little paid apps, that's probably going to switch a lot. What I'm trying to do in the background then is going, okay, well, now we're doing this. What are the good results we got from that? Can I have Gemini reverse engineer prompts that would get those results from like that this app's gotten? Can we build a version of it in-house that's in the kind of the Google mothership? But it's because we're thinking about AI as I'm like, again, clay that's being molded into certain things that you then make out of it. It's like, but it's unlimited clay, right? And then going back to your team members, we have never, I don't think, I personally don't look at it like, here's the I'm going to try to, I need to hire somebody. So I'm going to go try to figure out how to do this AI. I don't think I ever, I'm not sure about this, but I'm pretty sure I just don't think about hiring ever again in a weird way. Like it's so weird to say that, but there's a part of me that feels like that. I'll never have to hire again. The question is, with our existing team members, how do we use AI to help them level up so they can handle this new thing that the company needs to handle, whatever it is, right? And that's going to be you and I doing that, because we're going to obviously have to change over the years. So our team members are doing that. I was at a conference a couple months back talking about how the lowest level, right? I don't mean in like a derogatory way, just like from a skill set perspective, the lowest level team member we have, right? Kind of like the admin assistant, can create substantially good marketing campaigns, sales messages, emails. They can do what used to be a CMO's job or a true marketing strategist, and how they can do that, or at least get 85-90% of the way there so that one of us can take it and polish it. And that's freaking amazing. When you have that sort of capability where anyone on your team can kind of do anything, you just have to figure out, as long as it's done through AI, right? And then maybe that's through an agent thing, or maybe it's done through some other process. Like it's a pretty compelling world. And so that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, we're just sort of like, from a headcount perspective, not so much looking at it to replace team members, but to enhance team members so we don't have to add headcount,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do more, right? So you can, ultimately that
right.
People are the highest cost of goods sold in almost every business. Like that, like people are the most expensive thing. And so if you can do more and use it to generate revenue, you can be more profitable and you can be more generous with people who are there. And I think that's a pretty big, like that is where our workforce is heading. I've said this before, I think on this podcast, that I think there's going to be a lot of one and two person businesses
for sure,
moving forward. And sure. It's been on the wall. The writing's been on the wall for a long time with more offshore resources and gig economy, but it's getting more and more.
Yeah, we're all going to be gig economy, and some of us are just going to gig together. I think is what's going to happen, right? People are just going to, and they'll morph probably, I would imagine, so I could totally see that.
Yeah. So I have one more analogy that I want to do, because I think it's pretty important here. And it's just, it's continuing on with the kid analogy too.
Which is a great one, by the way. I've never even thought about it like that, but you're totally right with the young kids thing and the newborns. I love that.
So yeah, exactly. And unpacking the word partner, and this, we could probably do a whole thing on like, what does it mean to have a partner in crime, right? But, a partner gives you a feedback loop. Like you and I have a feedback loop. Like it's really nice. Like when you're on your own, when you just go to yourself, you don't get any feedback loop. So whether you talk to a therapist, whether you talk to a business partner, whether you're in a mastermind, whether you go to conferences, that's ultimately a feedback loop that we need as humans.
So true.
And we get there. And it's like, okay, well, but we're so afraid of AI, or we're mystified by it, that it's like, yeah, we can't give feedback to AI, or we can't help improve it, because it might feel like it's like a futile effort. It might be that you're like, some people don't like to give feedback to their kids. They're like, oh, the kid just needs to do that thing. And it's like, I'm very much a feedback to my kid person, because I want him to be a good citizen, right? So it's like, but you don't really know what feedback you need to give them until the thing happens. So like my son got in trouble for the first time a couple months ago. And I didn't really know how to, like, I reacted like, why didn't you know how to do this thing? And then I thought about it. I was like, why would he know the answer to this thing? Why would he know? Like, I need to give him feedback. And that's what AI is. For the first time, AI gave you that result. Every time they give you a result, it's the first time they've ever answered that question in your way. And if you can't tell them like, hey, no, this is actually how you need to do it, then you're not going to guide it well. And so it's like, that's pretty normal. Like, just like this tool accepts feedback better than anything. And so you do that. So it's like a chat. And that's where it actually ends up becoming an augmentation or a partner of yours, because a good partnership, a good friendship, a good marriage, you're giving feedback and then you're incorporating it into what you're doing. When you're afraid of that, it gets to be one-sided and dominated by something that you don't even really want, and you resent it. So every other aspect of life, we give feedback. We need to make sure we give feedback to these tools, these agents, because that'll make it better. Now, if you feel like the world's stacked against you or it's going to go away, that I can understand that it's going to be changing. But ultimately, your career, your business is still there. You're there. You're the one consistent thing in this whole thing. And don't you want to think to yourself that you are the one who put it on the line and you gave that feedback and you made this thing into what it is? Because that's how you should approach your career and your business anyway. You shouldn't be saying, hey, the odds are against me, or it's going to be changing. Well, if you have that attitude, you're never going to get anywhere in business. You're always going to be starting over from ground zero every single time. So treat it more like, hey, this is my legacy. is how I interact with every interaction in my life, whether it's human or AI, and I'm going to lay it all out there every single time. That's how I think the attitude should be with doing this.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. The only thing I'll say just as final thought and then throw it back to you to take us home is just capacity and capability, right? We always talk about CNC, capacity and capability. And like, what is your team capable of? What are you capable of? How much time do you have? In other words, that's your capacity. Yeah. AI dramatically expands both because it can free up your time because you're kind of collapsing time a little bit. So you have more capacity, and it definitely helps you with your capability. So focusing on that, I think, is the win.
Dude, I love that. That's going to be another episode. I'm going to put that title down there because this is in the world of AI. Yes, we have. What do you do when you have infinite capacity and infinite capability? Opens up a whole new world, and it gets rid of a lot of bottlenecks. So that wraps up this Business Unfiltered conversation. Thank you for listening to the Profit School by MeasureU podcast. Share what you've learned, and be sure to check us out at ProfitSchool.com and join the free community, and rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. And we will see you in the next episode.